children of the one Yahweh. Ye are the chosen of the one Yahweh. And he has given this law to us.
Yahweh in the Hebrew, in the name of who the world ignorantly refers to as Jesus Christ. Hamashiach Yahweh Shai in the Hebrew. Who are we? We are the Hebrew Israelites, so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native and Seminole Indians that come out here week in and week out to prophesy and to teach the lost sheep of the house of Israel, which are you so-called blacks, Hispanics, Native and Seminole Indians from the various 12 tribes of the nation of Israel. You are the descendants of the ones who wrote this book. You are the descendants of the ones who taught this book. You are the descendants of the one who they call Christ himself. You come from the same bloodline of people that Christ comes from. Right. And it's high time we understand that, recognize that, so we have to know how we step as a people. Because we gotta understand something, right? Like I was talking to a brother last night, right? We got the censure sign right here, yeah. Right? I asked him what did Christ look like, right? He didn't know too for sure and whatnot, but he knew that it wasn't something like this, right? Right. And so I brought him to the scripture, right? Revelations 13, Revelations 1 and 13 for reference, right? Well, we know that Christ doesn't look like this, right? So, but then I asked him, if Christianity lied to us about what Christ looked like, right? All over the world, what else is it such a far-fetched thing to understand that they lied to us about everything else about Christ?
Right.
Because they'll flip the script and say, well, color don't matter. Why are you making it about color? Well, if color don't matter, then why the hell did the Christian church change it and paint over it?
Talk about it, King.
If it didn't matter. And if they lied about what he looked like, then of course they're going to lie to us about what he taught, about what he really came here to do. And that's the reason why blacks, Hispanics, and natives are so destroyed as a people, because we believe the lies they taught us in Christianity. Give me that in the book of Matthew, right? 36.
This is the book of Matthew, chapter 22, verse 36.
Bring it up.
Master, which is the great commandment in the law? Yahweh Shai said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind.
See, Christians will love to read this passage and stop right there. Don't even explain how we love the Most High God or what that even means. You ask them, they're going to be like, they're just going to give you some puffed up rhetoric. Oh, be nice, be good. Treat people nice, treat people good. Well, what the hell does that mean? That's subjective. Everybody's definition of good is subjective. Everybody's definition of what it means to be nice is subjective. I used to tell my pastor the same thing. I'm like, look, there's some pretty good people who are really nice that do some really effed up garbage. Right. But they nice people. They'll treat you with respect. So whose definition of good are we going off of, right? Give me the book of Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 12. Because we got to recognize and understand something, right? They try to lie to us and say Christ didn't teach the law, statutes, and commandments of his father before him. The traditions and customs of his people before him. They try to tell us in the Christian church that when Christ came on the scene, he came specifically to do away with all of that. That there was an issue with what God had us doing for hundreds of years before that, and now it was Christ's time to rectify and fix everything that God was messing up for hundreds of years. That's madness. That means you have to tell us that the whole entire time God was wrong.
Right.
If that's really the case. But we know that's not the case, right? So where did Christ really get his teachings from? Read that up.
This is the book of Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 12.
Bring it out.
And now, Israel, what doth the Lord thy God require of thee? But to fear the Lord thy God, to walk in all his ways, and to love him, and to serve the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul.
Right? So this is where Christ is quoting, right? When they asked Christ, what is the greatest commandment in the law? Christ said, you should love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. Just love God. But then it's going to expound in Deuteronomy where Christ was quoting what it means to love God. Read.
To keep the commandments of the Lord and his statutes, which I command thee this day for thy good.
For thy good. So to love the Most High God with all your heart, mind, and soul is to do what he told us to do. Imagine that. That the way we got to love God is to do what God told us to do. Is it really? It's not a hard thing to imagine or to fathom. If you love somebody who you reverence as your father, as your authoritarian figure, you would do what they tell you to do. You would do what's required of you. You would do what's asked of you. So when Christ was asked the same question, what's the greatest commandment? The greatest commandment is do what you was told. That's it. God told you not to do this, don't do it. God told you to do this, do it. God said don't eat pork, don't eat it. God said wear your fringes, wear your fringes. God said don't shave your beard. If you're a man, then don't shave your beard. It's not that hard. And we see Christ standing on these same principles in the book of Matthew. Now go back to Matthew 22 and pick up at verse 39.
This is the book of Matthew, chapter 22, verse 39.
Bring it out.
And the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself.
Give me Leviticus 19 and 17, right? So the Christians will further on and read in Matthew, okay, you got to love God, and then you got to love your neighbor. See, we don't got to keep the law, statutes, and commandments of God no more, because Christ said it's just about loving God and loving your neighbor. What does that mean? Go somewhere in the Bible and explain to me what that means. They won't do it. They can't do it, because their answer is not in the Bible. The answer they give you is their rhetoric, which is nothing but lies and garbage. We just went to Deuteronomy where Christ quoted that to love God is to keep all his commandments. Now let's see where Christ quoted you got to love your brother from or your neighbor from, right? Read.
This is the book of Leviticus, chapter 19, verse 17.
Bring it out.
Thou shalt not hate thy brother in thy heart. Thou shalt in any wise rebuke thy neighbor and not suffer sin upon him.
All right, so it starts the introduction of how we love our brother, how we love our neighbor, how we treat him, and is rebuking him and correcting him when he ain't following the law, statutes, and commandments of the Most High God.
Right.
But Christianity says to love your neighbor is to forget about God's laws and just be a nice guy.
Bring it out.
But that's subjective. What does that mean? I could give my homeboy game to get away with some dirty garbage and help him come up in a dirty way. But do I love him if I'm doing that? Or if I'm correcting my brother and be like, hey, yo, that's not smart. Don't go about that way because God told us not to do that. Which one makes more sense? Keep reading.
Thou shalt not avenge nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people, but thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. I am the Lord.
See, so that's where Christ was quoting how to love your neighbor as yourself. It's entailed in not bearing any grudge, hatred, or any ill malice towards the people of your community, towards the brothers of your community, towards the sisters of your community. Don't bear any grudge to anybody of your people, of your tribes, of your race. For Black, Hispanic, and Native American man, woman, and child. That's what Christ means when he was quoting Leviticus when he says we should love your neighbor as thyself. Meaning, if you see your brother and your sister, your Israelite brother and sister, not following the laws of God, correct them and be like, yo, bro, man, I don't see you ain't got your fringes on today, man. What's up with that? Get to it. Go back inside, put them on. Hey, bro, I see you ordering that pork sandwich, bro. You remember Leviticus says that we ain't supposed to be eating that because God told us not to eat that. That's what the example Christ was giving us. The Christian church will go and tell us to be a good neighbor as a good Christian. As you see your brother's hungry, go buy him a pork sandwich and give him some food. That's what they tell you being a good neighbor is. But like I said, that's subjective. That's subjective. Because I can help my brother out by doing some dirty garbage.
Right.
Am I really helping him at that point? No, man. It's not that hard to understand. It's not that hard to fathom. That was it on that?
This is the book of Matthew, chapter 22, verse 40.
Bring it out.
On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets.
Right? So Christians, right? I went back and forth chopping it up bar for bar, right? They won't do that. They'll read that whole verse in Matthew, that whole portion in Matthew 22 and see, we don't got to keep the law, statutes, and commandments of God no more. Because Christ said all we got to do is love God, love your neighbor. Then that fulfills the whole law when we do that. But how do we fulfill the whole law when we do those two things? They can't explain it because they don't got no definitive answer. Well, we just gave you a definitive answer when we go to the source of what Christ was quoting. To love God and to love your neighbor, all those laws hang on that because if you love God, you'll do every single thing he told you to do.
Right.
And if you love your neighbor, you'll hold them to that same standard to do everything God told us to do as a people, as the Israelites, as God's chosen people, as Blacks, Hispanics, and Native and Seminole Indians out here. We returning to our heritage that they stripped from us when they put us down in the chattel slavery that they put upon our people, man.
This is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 18, verse 17.
Bring it out.
And the Lord said unto me, they have well spoken that which they have spoken. I will raise them up a prophet from among their brethren, like unto thee. I will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak unto them all that I shall command him.
Right? So the Most High is giving a prophecy saying to Moses, I'm going to raise up a prophet just like you. Now, what does it mean for a prophet, for someone to be raised up just like Moses? What did Moses do? He was a lawgiver. What did Christ do? He gave laws and instructions and teachings on those laws and instructions, right? So the Most High said, I'm going to raise up a prophet just like you. And even Christians, when you ask them, they'll agree, okay, you know what? That's talking about Christ, yeah. Now give me the book of Acts, chapter 3, verse 22, right? Because we're going to see that same sentiment spoken about in the book of Acts. How Christ was that prophet that was raised up just like Moses. And if he was supposed to be like Moses, then he was going to do what Moses did. Give laws. You got that? Read what you got.
This is the book of Acts, chapter 3, verse 22.
Bring it out.
For Moses truly said unto the Father, a prophet shall the Lord your God raise up unto you of your brethren, like unto me. Him shall ye hear in all things whatsoever he shall say unto you.
All right, so there we go again in the book of Acts, reiterating what it says in Deuteronomy. There's going to be a prophet raised up like Moses. He's going to speak the words of the Most High God, and you're going to do what he told you to do. So, 2 points. If Christ was supposed to be raised up in the same manner as Moses, what did Moses do? Give laws. So Christ gave laws, statutes, and commandments for us to do. Then, the words of the Most High God were going to be in the mouth of who the world calls Christ.
Right.
So, if Christ came to do away with the law, statutes, and commandments, and those are God's words, that means God switched up. He told us to do something for hundreds of years, and then when Christ came, he just flipped the script and said, we don't got to do it no more. If that's the case, give me the book of Malachi, chapter 3, verse 6. But we're going to see if that's true according to the scriptures. We just read that it was going to be the words of God that Christ himself spoke. So for the Christian church to understand it correctly, God had to change. God was wrong. He messed up. He gave Christ to erase his mistakes and fix his errors. Is that really the case of what God came to do when he sent Christ? You got that? Chapter 3, verse 6, right? Because we're going to see. If he was in a position like Moses and he was speaking the words of God, then something don't line up with what Christ actually said and did versus what the church says he actually said and did. It makes no sense at all whatsoever. That is madness, bro. For Christianity to think anything different about who the world calls Christ, saying he came to do away with everything God told our Israelites to do for the last hundreds and thousands of years, man. It's ridiculous. You got that? Read what you got.
This is the book of Malachi, chapter 3, verse 6.
Bring it out.
For I am the Lord, I change not. Therefore ye sons of Jacob are not consumed.
All right, so there we go. The Most High God himself said he don't change. He was who he was, and he is who he is, and he always be what he always is. He's not going to change. So when it says in Acts and in Deuteronomy how this Messiah, Christ, would speak the words of God, then Christ would have to speak pursuant to these law, statutes, and commandments and not deviate from the law, statutes, and commandments and say we don't got to do them no more.
Right.
If he would have actually speak the words of God. That's madness, bro. Christianity has beat the minds of our people down so much that we'd rather believe what a man says and take his rhetoric, take his point of view, and take his understanding as word, as law, as scripture. When the Bible itself don't speak to that. Don't mention that. Especially when it comes to something so cut and dry as keeping the law, statutes, and commandments of the Most High God. That's wild. But like I was going into last night, why does Christianity beckon so heavily on teaching blacks, Hispanics, and natives so profusely to stay away from the law, statutes, and commandments of the Most High God? They believe it's detriment to keep the law, statutes, and commandments of the Most High God. I was talking to a Southern Kingdom pastor a couple weeks ago, right? So-called black pastor the other day, right? And I told him, I was talking about the Torah, the law, right? You know what he told me? He said the Torah is garbage. Cut it up, burn it, destroy it is garbage. That's Christianity. Saying that the word, a pastor, the one who was preaching, teaching people, trying to read out the Bible. But he's saying that half of the Bible needs to be burnt away and destroyed and just cut up. And just so you know, to be at the Winn-Dixie on 56th Street every now and then, you know what I mean, to cut of the grass field, if anyone wants to fact check me, okay? That's madness, bro. What I got you holding, too?
This is the book of Acts, chapter 15, verse 19.
Bring it out.
Wherefore my sentence is that we trouble not them which from among the Gentiles are turned to God. But that we write unto them, that they abstain from pollution of idols, and from fornication, and from things strangled, and from blood.
So the apostles, when they're starting and building the foundation of the church after the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, right? Building the Christian church, they say their first sentence is, when these newcomers come into our church, let's give them fundamental Mosaic laws found in the Old Torah, found in the Old Testament to keep and do. Keep reading.
For Moses of old hath in every city them that preach him, being read in the synagogues every Sabbath day.
You see that? Then they said, why are we just giving them these easy, basic, fundamental laws to keep? Because Moses is going to be preached every day, every week, right? That's the foundation of the church the apostles were preaching, telling everybody to keep the law, statutes, and commandments. Don't eat pork. Don't shave your beard if you're a man. Don't wear mixed garments. Wear your fringes on the bottom of your garments. It's not that hard. Don't eat food sacrificed to idols. It's not that hard. It's not that hard to understand. And the apostles, after the death, burial, and resurrections, who followed the teachings of Christ, taught the law of Moses. But Christianity says, we don't got to keep the law, statutes, and commandments. That Christ taught against the law, statutes, and commandments. Then why do we see the apostles after death, burial, and resurrection teaching the law, statutes, and commandments? Something ain't adding up. The math ain't adding up. Christ and the apostles say one thing, Christianity and your Christian pastor every Sunday is saying something else. Who we gonna take? But there's a reason why, I was making a point earlier, there's a reason why Christianity teaches so profusely to stray away from the law, statutes, and commandments of the Most High God, saying we don't got to worry about it no more. We can eat pork. We can do whatever the hell we want to do. If I like my homeboy's girl, I'm gonna take her and just do what I want with her because I like her. You know what I mean? And in the Christian church, it's all fine. It's all good. You know how many sex scandals there are in the Christian church? You know how many drug scandals there are in the Christian church? It's madness, bro. Because they don't believe in the laws of God, which means they can do whatever the hell they want. It's free game to do what they want. But there's a reason why they do that in the Black and Hispanic community. Read.
This is the book of Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 15.
Bring it
But
out.
it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon you and overtake thee.
Right. So that's the reason why Christianity is so profusely pushing in the Black and Hispanic community to not worry about the law, statutes, and commandments of the Most High God, to be all one people in a multi-ethnic congregation. That's the reason why, is because modern day Christianity is a Greco-Roman assimilation.
Bring it out!
A Hellenistic lifestyle. The Greeks and the Romans wanted to gather all people together, force them to be Greek, and force them to stay away from their traditions and customs as a people and follow the Greek and Roman lifestyle. Now you got Roman holidays in Christianity like Christmas. Roman holidays in Christianity like Easter. Madness, bro. Even Thanksgiving stems back to Greek mythology. Madness, bro. What the hell do those days and those holidays have to do with the Bible?
Right.
With the Israelites, with Christ? Where does the Bible say celebrate Easter and Christmas and Thanksgiving? Where does the Bible say gather all people to build a multi-ethnic congregation? It doesn't. That's a Greco-Roman assimilation. But they did that for a specific reason. To get blacks, Hispanics, and natives away from the law, statutes, and commandments of the Most High God. Give me Deuteronomy 4 and 6. Because they know what makes us great as a people. We were just reading earlier before we set up to start teaching in the book of Maccabees, right? What was it, 2 and 50?
First Maccabees 2 and 50.
First Maccabees 2 and 50. Nah, I'm thinking about something else. Where they burnt the books, right?
1 and 56.
1 and 56.
Second Maccabees. No,
First Maccabees 1 and 56, that's right. Where it says they gathered our books and burnt our records, right? Which means they had, throughout history, they had a copy of our heritage, a copy of our instructions. So they know what makes us great as a people. Then they witnessed it themselves. And whenever they saw us stray away from the Most High God, they realized they can take us and they can oppress us. They know that's the quickest way to cut us off, because as long as we got God on our side, these other nations can oppress us, which is why the Greco-Roman Christian assimilation wants to keep blacks and Hispanics away from the law, statutes, and commandments of God. Read.
This is the book of Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 6.
Bring it out!
Keep therefore and do them, For this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall hear all these statutes, and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people.
See, so the law, statutes, and commandments that was given to our people, that makes us so great, that makes us so nigh and near and dear to the Most High God, was given to us in the face of all our enemies, in the face of everyone around us. So they know what makes blacks and Hispanics so great, which is why they push so hard to keep us away from the law, statutes, and commandments and from the instructions that our God gave to us and not to them. That's why they push it so heavily in our churches. That's why they push it so heavily in America. This whole system is designed around you, black man, around you, Hispanic man, Native man, woman, and child. This whole American system, this whole modern day Christian movement, this whole modern day Christian religion is pitted against our people to keep us in slavery, to keep us oppressed, to keep us downtrodden.
Talk about it.
Keep reading.
For what nation is there so great, who has God so nigh unto them, as the Lord our God is in all things that we call upon for him?
Right, so these other nations recognize what made blacks, Hispanics, and natives so great was that we had the laws, statutes, and commandments and instructions from the Most High God himself to give to our people only, not to anybody else.
That's right.
And they realized when they sever us away from these instructions, God doesn't want to deal with them. God actually punishes them when they don't do what he said. So let's get them to turn their back on each other. Now give me Deuteronomy 28 and 45. That's why we understand why they lied to us about what Christ looked like. Now we understand why they lied to us about what Christ taught. Now we understand why they lied to us about what the apostles taught and did. Everything they did, they lied to us. It's not an exaggeration. Us as a people, as blacks, Hispanics, and natives, we was lied to our whole entire life. Read.
This is the book of Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 45.
Bring it out.
Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee, and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep his commandments and his statutes, which he commanded thee.
Right? This right here was in the faces of all our enemies too. Just like our greatness when we listen to the law, statutes, and commandments as a people, the contract of us not listening to them and what would happen to us, they well understood that. And they used it to their advantage. Which is why we see the condition that we go through, right? We see any other community in this world or in this country, let's just take this country alone for a matter of fact, right? As a whole, who's at the bottom? The blacks, Hispanics, and the natives. We're the ones suffering. We're the ones in poverty. We're the ones who can't eat. We're the ones locked up. We're the ones getting killed. We're the ones who can't find a job and get a job or keep a job. We're the ones who's going through all this oppression. And we're the only ones who go through all that, right? But check it. All the other communities, Davis Island, Bayshore, right? The Caucasian communities in this country or in this city alone, the Asian communities in this city, the Arab communities in this city, all of us with the blacks, Hispanics, and natives, we got one thing in common. None of us keep the law, statutes, and commandments of the Most High God. But guess who's getting punished for it? Us.
Right.
Give me Amos 3 verse 1. We're the ones getting punished for it. We break God's laws, we get put in oppression. We eat pork, we get put in oppression. Caucasians eat pork, they get $1 billion. Kanye says we're the Jews, he loses $1 billion. Madness, bro. So it's got you to really think, who's really God's chosen people? Maybe it's the ones who were actually given the law, statutes, and commandments, and the only ones who are punished for not doing so.
Right.
Read.
This is the book of Amos chapter 3, verse 1.
Bring it out.
Hear the word of the Lord has spoken against you, O children of Israel.
Children of Israel, only to the Israelites, nobody else. Which are you so-called blacks, Hispanics, and natives? Read.
Right.
Against the whole family which I brought up out of the land of Egypt, saying, you only have I known of all the families of the earth. Therefore I will punish you for all your iniquities.
That's why we're the only ones getting punished for breaking the laws of the Most High God. Read what you got, Doc.
This is the book of Isaiah, chapter 66 and verse 17 in the NLT.
Bring it out.
Those who consecrate and purify themselves in a sacred garden with its idol in the center, feasting on pork and rats and other detestable meats, will come to a terrible end, says the Lord.
You see that? And you see why when blacks, Hispanics, and natives eat all these abominable foods like shrimp, catfish, pork, lobster, right? We're the ones who get high blood pressure. We're the ones who get diabetes. We're the ones who get gout. We're the ones who suffer from sickle cell. We're the ones who suffer from all these different diseases and illnesses that nobody else suffers from. My whole family, right? I'll say my father's side of my family, right? But my whole father's side of my family, on my grandmother's side of my father's side, on my grandfather's side of my father's side, right? You know how many of us got diabetes? Other families I knew that I grew up around, like Timothy and Jonathan and Becky, her families, they didn't get diabetes. They didn't get gout. Their families didn't have to get organs taken out because of it. Their families didn't have to get needles in the arm every single day of their life because of it. Their families didn't have to lose people prematurely because of certain illnesses like that. But our people, we're the ones who suffer and die and get punished for eating these detestable things, for not doing what God told us to do. So we got to realize and wake up. If we're the only ones getting punished for breaking God's laws and nobody else is getting punished, that means to show God only deals with us.
Right.
Blacks, Hispanics, and Native and Seminole Indians, North, Central, and South America, to the Caribbean, to the Isles of West Africa, to the coast of West Africa. We are the only ones getting punished when we break these laws, statutes, and commandments. Yeah, that's where they lie to us. About those diseases we get from eating pork, shrimp, crab, lobster, all these detestable animals, right? Oyster shells, right? They make it seem like it's a delicacy, bro. Eating clams and oysters, that's madness. Then they go and tell us diseases we get from eating these disgusting foods. Oh, it's just hereditary. Yeah. It's just in your genetics. It's in your blood. Madness.
The diet of a shrimp is just nothing but shit.
Right, exactly. The same thing with pigs and shrimp and lobster. All they eat is shrimp, bacteria, and pesticide. Or what do you call it? Pesticides, right? That's the word? Parasites, my bad. Parasites. Oh, you see what I'm saying, bro? It's madness. But they want to lie to us and say, oh, it's just hereditary. Keep eating your pork. Keep eating your shrimp. Keep eating your abominable foods. Hey, when I was growing up, right, I ate like my family ate, right? My great abuela, right? She was big, she was chunky, and she had diabetes most of her life, right? And her philosophy was, if you're not fat, you're not healthy, right? If you're not eating whatever you want to eat, you're not healthy. If you're not enjoying it, you're not healthy. She was sick her whole entire life. Her whole entire life for 50 years was miserable because of the diseases that she got. And then me as a child, 8 damn years old, I'm having health problems. I'm having life-threatening health problems because of my diet. I switched to my diet. I stopped eating pork, shrimp, crab, lobster, right? Mainly the pork and the shrimp, right? I started eating clean. Bro, my health bounced back immediately, bro, and now I'm good. I don't suffer from borderline diabetes no more. I don't suffer from life-threatening diseases that plague the Black and Hispanic community because I do what God told us to do.
Right.
Right? Give me Amos 3:1 again, and then give me Ecclesiastes 12 and 13 after that.
This is the book of Amos, chapter 3, verse 1.
Read out.
Hear this word that the Lord has spoken against you, O children of Israel.
O children of Israel. So this is a word the Most High God spoke against our people, blacks, Hispanics, Native and Seminole Indians, right? Read.
Against the whole family which I brought up from the land of Egypt, saying, you only have I known of all the families of the earth.
So God said, out of every single race of this earth, he chose to love and know you, so-called black, Hispanic, Native, and Seminole Indian man, woman, and child. God chose you above everybody else. Read.
Talk about it, kid.
I will punish you for all your iniquities.
So that's why we're living in these hoods, these ghettos, these barrios, being oppressed, being shot down, being locked up, being strung on all these drugs, suffering from all these diseases that plague our community, because God's only punishing us because he only cares about us. Right. So it's high time we turn back to the commandments he gave us.
That's right.
Now give me Ecclesiastes 12 and 13, Babu Kishah.
This is the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 12, verse 13.
Bring it out.
Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man.
See, this is the whole duty and the conclusion of everything I've been saying up here and everything we could continue to keep saying up here and week in and week out. It's for blacks, Hispanics, and Native Seminole Indians to return back to the laws, statutes, and commandments of our God.
That's right.
And with that, I'm going to give all praises, all honor, all glory due to the Most High God, Yahweh, Bahashem, Mashiach, Yahweh Shai, and say, Kwam Yasharallah.
Kwam Yasharallah.
SICARRI.
We are the children of the one Yahweh.